today. Let's hear it for every single person who came up on this stage just now. Senator Nina Turner, Dr. Cornel West, Cynthia Nixon, Sunflower Bean for sharing their skills and their talents. Funny story about Sunflower Bean, actually. Their lead singer, Julia Cummings, she's from New York City, as I am. And way back before I won my primary, like months before, there was a public forum that was coming on, and Julia Cummings, lead singer of Sunflower Bean, invited me to come speak, and it was like my first ever real public appearance. And so tonight's a real full circle moment, and she gave me space then, and I'm so excited that she's on, and Sunflower Bean's on this stage tonight. So let's give them a round of applause. And let's talk about this moment. I want us to talk about this moment here tonight on the eve of the New Hampshire primary. Because this is a very important moment that we have tonight in our democracy. Because we have a choice to make. And it is important for us to realize that choice tomorrow. And to do everything that we can to expand the electorate and transform our democracy, to center everyday people, fight for healthcare as a right, fight for a living wage, fight to end mass incarceration, fight to break up ICE and CBP. It's gonna take you to do it.
How you doing? It's been a while.
Oh, hey, Santa.
It's gonna take mass movement politics to do it. That's the theory of change. That's what political revolution is all about.
Fuck you! Fuck you! Fuck you! Fuck what you stand for! 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 Fuck you! Fuck you! Fuck what you stand for! Fuck what you stand for!
Save a life, kill a cop. Save a life, kill a cop. Save a life, kill a cop. Save a life, kill a cop.
I want to talk a little bit about why Bernie. Because Bernie has not committed to what is right when it was popular. Senator Bernie Sanders has spent his entire life fighting for the right thing when it was unpopular.
Out that when we were in Moscow, for example, I think most of the people here also were extremely impressed by their public transportation system. The stations themselves were absolutely beautiful, including many works of art, chandeliers that were beautiful. It was a very, very effective system. Also, I was impressed by the youth programs that they have, their palaces of culture for the young people, a whole variety of programs for young people, and cultural programs which go far beyond what we do in this country.
And I'll tell you now that I'm in Washington, D.C., and we've been there for a year, I can tell you that's not easy to do. It is the hardest thing to stand up to the establishment of big pharma, to big oil and gas, to stand up to bigotry. Because as we know, what we've seen is that you can galvanize people pretty easily around hate.
Off our streets, Nazis come! 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 Off our streets, Nazis Don't fucking touch me! Don't fucking touch me! Nazis come! Off our streets!
It is hard to stand up and fight for someone you don't know when it's not the popular thing to do, and he has done it his whole damn life. His whole life. And that's not just a testament to who Senator Sanders is. It's not just a testament to who he is. It's a testament to the strength that is needed and necessary in the White House to get an agenda done for working people. About 3 or 4 years ago now, I was an activist and I had found myself at Standing Rock, fighting against, standing in support of our Native brothers and sisters, honoring and centering Indigenous wisdom in our energy policy and environmental policy. And I remember how hard it was for people to speak out in that time, because we had a Democratic administration, and you're not supposed to talk about what's wrong when the political establishment has congealed sometimes in that way. You're not supposed to talk about that. In that time, thousands of Americans went out to Standing Rock, to Ocheti, to center and say, listen to our Native brothers and sisters. Listen to them. We listen to them. That when that fracking pipeline was going through an affluent white community, they stood up and said, not in our backyard. So what happened? That pipeline went to a native, through a native community. And so they started to galvanize, and they let out that call. And thousands of everyday Americans heeded that call to center our community. You know who showed up? Senator Sanders showed up. You know who else showed up? Almost no one. And thousands of everyday Americans heeded that call. When we look at what happened in that debate stage, who brings up Palestine? Senator Bernie Sanders.
This wave of attacks is not the result of lack of political horizon. We've been suffering terror attacks for the last 95 years. 1920, 1921, 1936 to 1939, the Fedayeen attacks, the Intifada attacks, they were actually at their height during the beginning of the Oslo peace process, and people said, well, this is because these are enemies of peace. So the result, the explanation for the terrorist waves that we had then was the advance of peace. Now they say you have terrorist attacks because there is no peace. Neither is true. They're attacking us not because they want peace or don't want peace, it's because they don't want us here. If they're frustrated, I assure you that frustration will continue because we're going to continue to be here. As far as settlements are concerned, this is not a result of a massive wave of settlement because there's not been a massive wave of settlement. And second, we have something else. And the facts count. It is the very killers themselves who explain why they're doing what they're doing. They leave behind Facebook pages in which they cite and repeat Palestinian incitement about the Al-Aqsa Mosque. All the lies that are said about us trying to bring down the mosque or change the status quo, they cite that as the reason for their activity. And you can't fit a false template on reality. This is what is driving this current wave. I'm sorry. The old models don't apply. There's a Palestinian attempt to inflame violence based on the false allegations that we are changing the Temple Mount, now on the false allegations that we're executing innocent civilians. Doesn't wash. And I expect our friends around the world to look at these facts, recognize them for what they are, and I think to condemn these Palestinian attacks and to demand from Abu Mazen to stop the incitement and to restore calm. Now, we're not going to divide the city any more than people who are putting curfew in neighborhoods in towns in Europe or in the United States on occasion are dividing those cities. So don't get swept away, don't carry it away. Don't build your hopes high. That's the first point. The second point is, look, we expect every fair-minded observer to see that Israel is using exactly the kind of legitimate and the amount of legitimate force that any one of those governments, and those municipalities, and those police forces would use if they had people wielding knives, meat cleavers, axes, trying to kill people on their streets. What do you think would happen in New York if you saw people rushing into crowds trying to murder people? What do you think they would do? You think they'd do anything different from what we're doing? They might, actually, but certainly not less, okay? And what would happen in Washington? And what would happen in London? Or what would happen in Paris or Rome or Moscow or anywhere else? Of course, this allegation is totally false. It's utterly false. It's also utterly unfair because it's so obviously, patently false. So I expect fairness, and I expect to put blame where it's due, and to say, here's a fact. We're now being told from the hospital that the condition of the Palestinian would-be murderer is light, but the condition of the young boy that he attacked is actually very critical. So the attacker comes out on the cheap, so to speak. And yet people are making a moral symmetry at best between the attacker and his victim. And much worse, they're accusing Israel of being the guilty party in this case, and that just will not fly. You know, the first order of the day in fighting terrorism is moral clarity. Nothing justifies terrorism. Nothing exonerates it, and stop trying to explain it away. This is terrorism, murder, pure and simple. Abu Mazen is inciting murder. Make him accountable and stop trying to justify it in any way. Not with settlements, not with peace process, not with anything. It is unjustifiable and unacceptable, and the mere fact that this is brought up as a possible explanation, of course, gives the terrorists a justification that they don't even use. They might now, but they haven't up to now, and that tells you a lot.
When we talk, let's go back further. Let's go back further, because now people think that progressive ideals are in vogue. Who put them in vogue? Which campaign made a living wage and centered that? Which candidate in this race never took corporate PAC money ever in their life? In their life? Senator Bernie Sanders, who was one of the first major presidential candidates to ever campaign on Medicare for all, healthcare as a right in the United States, Senator Bernie Sanders.
Well, look, we have political opponents.
You don't know.
Come up.
You don't know how much your plan costs.
You don't know. Nobody knows. This is impossible.
You're going to
predict.
propose a plan to the American people, and you're not going to tell them how much it costs?
Let's go back further. Who stood up? Who stood for women and gender nonconforming people's right to choose in the 90s when it was unpopular? Senator Bernie Sanders. Who was standing up and saying that we should center and that we should lift up our queer brothers and sisters when people were passing the DOMA, Defense of Marriage Act? Senator Bernie Sanders. Senator Bernie Sanders. Fast forward this campaign, who is the only candidate to call to break up ICE and CBP? Senator Bernie Sanders.
About, sadly, again, AOC, she compared the border crisis and illegal immigrant detention centers that are used to house people pending hearings and prior to deportation to Nazi concentration camps and the Holocaust, where millions were murdered. Frankly, there is no comparison, but because she made the comparison, now Antifa, they're the so-called anti-fascists. They think they're fighting Nazis in America. They're not, but they just firebombed an ICE facility in Tacoma, Washington, and this is what's happening now because Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez foolishly and recklessly compares what's going on here in the United States to Nazi Germany and the conditions in the concentration camps, and there is basically no comparison. It's a very, very foolish, misguided, and frankly ignorant comparison to be making, but here we are. This is America 2019, and we're having and some excerpts say, quote, "Evil says concentration camps for folks deemed lesser are necessary. The handmaid of evil says the concentration camps should be more humane." This is a call to patriots, too, to stand against this travesty, against everything that you hold sacred. I know you. I know that in your hearts you see the dishonor in these camps. Here it is, in these corporate, for-profit concentration camps. Detention centers are an abomination. I'm not standing by. So he tried to build.
Fascists go home! 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 Fascists go home!
That matters. All of this matters. And when it comes to politics, you get what you pay for. And when you have candidates bankrolled by billionaires, who are they going to work for? Who do you think they're going to work for? When you have candidates that only take contributions from and by the people, who have only ever taken contributions by the people, who do they work for? Who does that person work for? The people. This matters. This primary, these elections, they matter. Because in November, when we kick out Donald Trump from the White House, we're either going to go back to how things were, or we're going to move forward to establish a 21st century advanced society that guarantees economic, social, and human rights for all people. And let's talk about November. Let's talk about November, because we know in every poll, Bernie beats Trump. And let me tell you something, Trump knows that. Why else do you think he has come here tonight? For anybody else? No, because they see you, all of you, right here in this arena, coming together in the name of love and fighting for someone you don't know and centering your neighbor and fighting for the least of us in rejection of racism, homophobia, xenophobia.
Nazis go home!
Nazis go home! Nazis go home!
Rage and resolve, displays of force. Protest politics in the U.S. have changed, and not just on the right. In late August in Berkeley, California, images of violence against right-wing demonstrators earned the black-clad Antifa a surge of notoriety. Across the political spectrum, revulsion. Berkeley's mayor, a Democrat, called for a crackdown.
I think we should classify them as a gang. You know, they come dressed in uniforms, they have weapons, they're almost a militia.
To say we're going to center healthcare for all people in the United States of America. We're going to fight for economic dignity, 21st century economic rights. We are at a crossroads in our democracy. We're at a key crossroads. And we cannot underestimate the power of hate. We cannot underestimate the power of that divisiveness and the centering and the vitriol and all of that. We cannot underestimate that. And that is why we need to nominate someone with a political revolution at their back, with decades of organizing bringing us to this moment. It is not going to be any one candidate that defeats Donald Trump. It's going to be a movement of Americans that defeat Donald Trump in rejection of hatred and embracing of love.
With here, yes. Do you understand? Yes, I am a fucking communist. Okay? Do it, shove it in my face. I dare you, dude.
That's better. Thank you.
I want to see you try. Fucking Nazi, get the fuck out of here.
There's a lot of centering here, and there's a lot of accommodating. People worry about voters that perhaps have never experienced or been touched by someone with an immigration crisis, whose family has not been separated, whose family perhaps has never been unjustly incarcerated, people who have never struggled to afford their health care in the United States, people that have never struggled people have never struggled to make ends meet. There's a lot of worrying about how we win over those people. My plea to you, first of all, I don't know too many people that have never been touched by one of these issues. But if you are blessed enough, my ask is to fight for someone you don't know, fight for someone who has struggled for health care, vote for someone who is an immigrant, vote for someone who has been unjustly incarcerated, vote for the least amongst us. There are two paths we can take. One is a nomination that brings us back to business as usual, but business as usual was not working for working people. It was not. Or we can choose to move forward. And as someone who has been told to go back, I'm gonna tell you, we're moving forward.
Trying to make their families have a better life. Working people have it harder and harder these days. And we believe that things will get better when workers of the world unite.
Thank you, Academy.
Forward to a multiracial democracy, forward to guaranteed health care, forward to a living wage, forward to fighting for our neighbors, forward for indigenous rights and honoring sovereignty, forward, forward, forward. That's where we're gonna go. We're not going back to the days where people had to hide. We're not going back to the days where people have to worry. We're not going back. We are going forward. And with that, I am so excited to bring you the candidate that will get us there.